was a beautiful day and I had a meeting with Faye at a small pub. I invited Faye this time actively, made him surprised and curious a little bit. "Why are you really excited to invite me today? Is there something wrong?" Faye asked. I assured him that it was only to enhance the beauty of our friendship. He smiled when he heard that. We raised our glasses. With a heavy heart, I prepared to discuss the main issue. Faye got his glass raised and put it in his mouth as he watched me. I began to recall my school days and told him many stories. But with Faye, he simply understood that I had something that I would like to ask for his assistance. While it was true that this was somewhat embarrassing to say, Faye was also very sensitive when he discovered my intentions. "What are you up to? Don't be shy. We are no longer strangers, right?" Faye said. I knew I couldn't hide from him, so I drank the rest of my drink to relax. I hesitated and then told Faye that I had just met the girlfriend I had broken up with 5 years ago. She came to see me with a lovely son who was already 8 years old. "Wow, don't tell me that baby is yours," Faye exclaimed, surprised. When I heard him say that, I pushed his silly and negative thoughts aside with denial. I continued the story. Her son and husband were both injured in a traffic accident, and the child had been in a coma for several months. When Faye heard that, he gave me a serious look and raised his hand to tell me to stop. "Should she go to see a doctor instead? Why was she coming with you?" I sighed and softly asked Faye to look into whether there was any other invisible reason why he couldn't wake up. Faye also thought for a long time before standing up, preparing some necessary items and calling me to accompany him to the hospital to see the boy. We took a taxi on the street and went directly to the central hospital. The ex-girlfriend from the hospital room greeted us. Then she escorted Faye and me into the hospital to check on the boy's condition. He was in a coma on the bed, motionless and hooked up to an oxygen machine, but his skin was still very ruddy. Faye got to work right away. He took a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes. After a while, Faye immediately opened his eyes, his face solemn and concerned. I only need to look at his face to know that something was wrong, so I turned to him and inquired the reason. However, Faye felt that talking in the hospital room was inconvenient, so he summoned my ex-girlfriend and me outside. I concernedly asked Faye what had happened. "So strange. I can no longer see the boy's soul inside his body," Faye stated. When the mother heard it, she became terrified. Faye then requested that my ex-girlfriend drive the two of us to the location of the accident. The car quickly drove away and came to a stop near the suburbs. We easily stopped the car for convenient observation because the road was quite deserted and there were only a few cars passing by. Faye had such a keen sense that he could pinpoint the location of the accident with a single glance around. After hearing that, I was curious as to know how he knew the location. Faye showed a cool and calm face, saying that he felt the dark energy of many evil spirits who had accidents on the stretch of road. My ex-girlfriend stood beside Faye, listening to everything he said, and choking as if she wanted to cry, admitting that everything Faye said was true. The day of the accident, the couple was on their way to take their son to his grandparents' house for the weekend, she recalled. Everyone in the car was having a good time talking and playing. In a sudden, a truck traveling at high speed sped up to their vehicle. Fortunately, her husband was able to steer away from the truck in time and the truck collided with the back of the car. She and her son in the back seat were hit hard by the impact. Their son was rendered unconscious as a result of what appeared to be a minor accident. Faye listened intently, as if he was waiting on some important information. Then he proceeded straight ahead. 3 of us fixed our gazes on the grass. as if looking for something. We noticed a large rock broken in two hidden behind the towering weeds. It was the only thing that drew me in and made me curious about the strange object. When I asked Faye about it, he replied, "This is proof that the ghosts are here and are being held back by this stone." The explanation sounded a little perplexing, so Faye agreed to meet with me tonight. He would help me in seeing the parallel world that existed here. Faye then drove my ex-girlfriend back to the hospital to take care of her son while I prepared for tonight's ceremony. He also told me that this was the most common method of summoning souls and that it was simple but very effective. That night, I sat in the car, nervously waiting for Faye to drive me back to the intersection we visited this morning. When he arrived, he hastily opened the trunk and struggled to find some items. Faye worked tirelessly to transport all of the prepared tools to the back of the truck. I stood beside Faye, admiring the strange charms and bells that Faye carried. Then he handed me a stack of paper coins and instructed me to scatter them on the street while he rang the bell to summon the boy's soul. We immediately stood in the middle of the intersection and took action. Faye called out the boy's name out loud as he continued to shake the resounding bells. At the same time, I was struggling to scatter fake banknotes on the street following Faye's voice. The bell rang evenly throughout the intersection, but Faye noticed nothing out of the ordinary. The paper coins that I had scattered were also still on the ground, not moving as they had before. So Faye came to a halt and asked me to assist him in collecting the coins that I had scattered on the street. Facing the failure of the first plan, Faye immediately started working on the second plan. I was surprised to see that Faye had prepared a backup plan. He reminded me the summoning soul method he had talked about earlier in the morning. At the time, I just remembered it, and that it was his main plan. Faye, on the other hand, hesitated. He was concerned about how dangerous it would be to carry out this ritual. I was afraid no one else would be able to do it if he couldn't. Aside from that, Faye required someone sharp enough to complete the ritual correctly and safely. I know Faye was worried in his heart. His eyes showed that he wanted to nominate me but was unsure. As a result, I strongly recommended myself. I thought he would refuse, but no. He took out the red thread that had been prepared and tied it to my finger, telling me not to lose it. I had no idea what was going on when Faye in a sudden took out a piece of red fabric to cover my eyes and led me to the center of the intersection. A cold wind blew up from the ground, coiling around my body like a tornado. In my suspense, I kept hearing Faye's voice telling me to find the boy quickly before he and I are trapped here forever. Then Faye's voice vanished. Instead, there were horrifying roars coming from in front of me. All around me were wandering ghosts who appeared to be so frightening. I approached slowly. There were many ghosts around me, possibly because they died in a car accident and their bodies were not recovered. I had the sensation of stepping on cold, swishy, muddy ground. I was shivering because the air was so cold here. I mingled with the crowd, pretending to be them as well. It was so heavy that I felt like I was going to burn out. I attempted to walk while still clutching the red thread, but then the red thread vibrated, and I awoke, confused. When I looked back, I realized that these scenes were completely real. Not an imagination that I created while wearing the red blindfold. The people in front of me were not ordinary living people, but actual ghosts. Looking ahead, I noticed the boy. I finally found his soul, which had been wandering ahead. I hurriedly pursued the boy, passing many other frightening souls. Because he was so terrified by the accident, the spirit of the other boy had escaped from the body and was walking on this road unconsciously right now. When I caught up to the boy, I put my hand on his shoulder and called his name, but his head turned back to look at me. It looked so frightening. I was startled by the boy's scary, ghostly face and quickly let go of his shoulder. He wasn't the boy I was looking for, but the real trouble began when my actions drew the attention of the spirits around. They rushed over to me and encircled me. Only now I realized what horror was. There were frightening ghosts in front of me, reaching out their hands to pounce on me. I struggled, trying to push these ghosts away, but they grew in number. A ghost dashed over, grabbed my arm, and dragged me towards him. At that precise moment, distant sparks flew to attack those ghosts, assisting me in escaping their encirclement. So, seizing the opportunity, I dashed away, then joined the crowd again. I knew I didn't have much time left and I needed to find the boy as soon as possible. Fortunately, in the fog, I noticed a boy crying while walking. The figure also appeared to be very familiar. At first, I was a little skeptical, but when I looked at his ruddy skin, I realized he was not a ghost. I was overjoyed and about to run to him when I was stopped by the red thread on my finger. I ran as fast as I could to the boy, but I had to be careful not to lose the red thread if I didn't want to stay here forever. The more I ran, the tighter the thread became and the more I was drawn back. I looked helplessly in the boy's direction, noticing a large, bright blue puddle just a few feet away. I was aware of the situation's urgency, so I ventured to call out the boy's name loudly in order to wake him up. The boy jumped and turned to look at me, his eyes welling up with tears as soon as he heard his name. I was overjoyed when I realized it was the person I was looking for and waved my hand for him to come over to me. I dashed over to the boy as quickly as I could. When the boy realized I was a real person, he tried to flee but was stopped by two ghosts behind him. That dangerous and urgent scene perplexed me as I tried to unravel the red thread so I could flee to save the boy. After some deliberation, I decided to take the risk and remove the red thread, then rushed to rescue the boy from the clutches of the demons. "Here I am! Your mother asked me to come pick you up, let's go!" After saying that, I clutched the boy's hand tightly and returned to the old path to find my way back. But the situation became worse when the red thread vanished. With the current situation, I could only go with my gut instinct. I didn't dare to tell him about my current situation for fear of causing him more panic and anxiety, so I silently led him back to the old path through the dense fog. I was trying to figure out how to contact Faye right now in order to find a solution. All of a sudden I heard a dog barking next to me. I happily looked in the direction of the bark and happened to see a rather large dog with red thread in its mouth. As soon as he saw the dog, the boy exclaimed, "This dog is my lost dog from a long time ago." So as soon as I got the red thread, the boy and I followed it. I finally heard Faye's voice after a while. When I opened my eyes, I noticed Faye tugging at the red scarf that was covering my eyes. I looked befuddled at Faye and then around, but the boy was no longer standing next to me, which confused me greatly. "Don't worry, the boy's soul has already been deposited in a mirror," Faye said. Hearing Faye say that, I sighed and sat down on the ground, gasping for breath after a long adventure. After cleaning up the mess, Faye and I decided to drive back to the hospital. I sat in Faye's car and pondered, then turned to Faye and asked him why he had chose me for this dangerous task. Faye burst out laughing when he heard my question. He stated that it was a test he wanted to give me in order for me to demonstrate my abilities. I was reminded of the first time I worked with Faye. Indeed, I believe I have matured significantly. After that day, the child gradually regained consciousness and recovered very quickly, much to the delight of the parents and the surprise of the doctors. People might think it was a miracle for those who didn't know about me and Faye. This morning, I had an appointment with Faye to go with him to a residential area not far from me. This time, a girl found my service to ask for help. The girl invited us into her house and started her story. She told us she was a single mother and lived with her son. Faye and I focused on listening. The girl said she had just moved in and had experienced many strange phenomena in this apartment a month ago. She accidentally found out about this apartment through a real estate post on the internet. The realtor brought the mother and son into the apartment to visit and look around. The realtor confidently introduced her. This was the best and cheapest apartment in this area. When the door was opened, space inside was a completely different world filled with available children's toys. The child who saw the toys in front of his eyes excitedly ran over. When she was about to run to hug her son, the realtor told her to let the boy play freely. The realtor told her that the owner of this house was a person who loved children, so he bought many toys. While her son was playing carefree outside, the realtor offered to take her inside to take a tour of the bedroom. First, the realtor showed her through the bedroom, which was quite clean and tidy. The realtor also told her that there was also a small bedroom for the children next to his room. She couldn't miss this apartment because the design was both convenient and modern, and the rent was very cheap. When she and the realtor returned to the living room, she looked for her son, but he was nowhere to be found. She was a little uneasy, immediately called out her son's name and looked for him everywhere. Suddenly, she looked down at her feet and saw a toy ball rolling from a nearby room. She looked at the ball and then looked at the room behind her, suddenly feeling a little afraid. She slowly walked to the other room. It was the children's room that the realtor talked about earlier. She took a few steps into the room when she suddenly heard her son's voice behind her. She turned around and saw the son standing behind her. He also seemed to like this apartment very much. After that, she did not hesitate to rent this apartment and quickly moved here to live with her son. But since she and her son moved into this apartment, her family had encountered many strange phenomena. Her son always ran up to her with a grimace on his face, asking her about his constantly lost toys. At first, she didn't pay much attention to this because she thought he misplaced them somewhere. After the mother and son spent all day looking for, but still had no results, the son was resentful and went back to his room. At night, the mother was woken up and slowly walked from her room to the bathroom. As soon as she opened the door, she suddenly saw a strange scene. A shadowy figure appeared behind the bathroom door. With the flickering light of the room, she thought it was her son, but strangely, the shadow stood still behind the door, not moving. So she decided to open the bathroom door, but there was no one inside. She felt extremely confused, so she turned to her son's room. She slowly walked over, slowly opened the door to the room, and went inside to check it out. Inside the room, the son was still sleeping comfortably on the large bed without knowing anything. So she walked over and gently pulled the blanket up for her son. After checking on her son, she quietly went out, still feeling strange about what just happened. But the culmination of the incident must be the strange phenomenon that the mother and son accidentally encountered yesterday. After going out with her son, she opened the door and went inside with her son. In the middle of the room, she saw a strange-looking boy about the same age as her son, playing on the swing in the house. She thought he was the son of someone who got lost. So she ran to him, but when she approached, the boy was gone. Then there was a sound of a ball rolling on the floor. dragging the ball into her son's bedroom. The mother felt that something was wrong and hurriedly chased the shadow to see what it was. When she ran into the room, she saw a figure rushing into the closet and gently closing the door to hide. She looked at the white small hand that was creeping through the gap in the door in front of her and gave a shiver. She mustered her courage, ran to the closet, hurriedly opened the door and looked inside. But strangely enough, that boy was gone. She looked in every nook and cranny of the closet, checking it thoroughly, but there was nothing. Her son, standing next to her, also accidentally witnessed everything. He burst into tears in fear and told her that he often got his toys taken by the other boy. At this point, she panicked when she realized all this time her son had been exposed to the strange things she had just witnessed earlier. She told us the story, and her face still couldn't hide the fear. Hearing the story, Faye immediately said, "In your house, there must be a demon child." The mother worriedly asked Faye and told him to show her how to deal with this. Faye was very calm, as if knowing how to solve the story was simpler than turning his hand. He told the mother to spread the white powder around the house and lead them into the son's bedroom. Then they should go out. I always found it difficult to understand Faye's ways. In the afternoon, I received a phone call from Faye. He called me to quickly come to the mother and son's apartment to check. When I ran to the place, I saw Faye and this woman standing in front of the room. The woman's gaze could not hide her surprise. I also curiously walked over to stand next to Faye and look inside. I exclaimed in panic, deliberately rubbing my eyes to see better. But unexpectedly on the floor there were many strange traces. Many footprints walked back and forth in the house from the outside leading into the son's room. If they looked closely, those were the footprints of children. I began to tremble at this horrible case, hesitant to go inside. But Faye was so natural and didn't seem to have any feelings towards those footprints. Just as Faye and I had predicted, this footprint stretched from the living room to her son's room and straight to an object. Footprints would stop when walking to the closet door. Faye and I looked at each other. Then Faye asked me to push this huge closet aside to see the strange thing. This closet was quite heavy. When I pushed the closet over a bit, a big square revealed behind it. Faye told me this was an altar. On the altar was a golden doll surrounded by the lost son's toys. Faye told me and the mother and son standing below that this doll was a demon child because the apartment's owner had left it in the room to attract fortune. The realtor said that the owner was a person who liked children and was to lure the children to come here and suck their yang kui. After hearing this, the mother trembled, asking Faye to show her and her son how to solve it. He smiled coldly and said, "Please take the black tape to cover the eyes and mouth of the doll for me." In this way, the soul in the doll would not see her son and would not be able to eat anything. Within a month, the soul would disappear. After that, I waited until the woman finished following Faye's instructions. Then I helped her push the closet back to its place. In the end, the two of us said goodbye to mother and son and left. Later, the woman contacted me again. She called the realtor to tell the story of the demon child in the apartment and was compensated a good amount of money. This was the story Faye told me. That day, he had a date with an old acquaintance named Tani. The two met at the cafe. When Faye arrived, he saw Tani waiting there. Faye thought he was late, so he took the initiative to apologize to Tani. Tani looked at his watch and said Faye arrived at the exact time, not a minute late. It was just that Tani came early because he was so impatient. Faye immediately asked Tani about what was happening at Tani's house. Tani lit a cigarette and started talking. This story happened to his mother. Because he was not too close to Tani, Faye didn't know about Tani's family. According to Tani, he had a younger brother. The two brothers were more than 10 years apart because his mother gave birth to a younger brother when she was old. When they were young, they used to fight often. Sometimes they also quarreled over toys. At such times, Tani was always blamed because every time his younger brother cried, his mother also advocated. The younger brother was very stubborn from a young age. Despite his bad grades in school, he was always pampered by his mother. Growing up, he dropped out of high school and wandered around with his gangster friends, refusing to come home. Even when his mother was sick, Tani went to his younger brother to call him to visit their mother. But Tani's younger brother still refused to turn home. For him, friends outside were better than family. Tani tried to stop him, but Tani's younger brother only hated Tani more. He even said bad things to Tani. After that, he turned his back and left. That made Tani even more angry with his younger brother. And in the heat of the moment, Tani inadvertently asked the younger brother why he didn't die, so that his mother's suffering could be reduced. But Tani himself did not expect that day would be the last time Tani met his younger brother because his unintentional words came true. That night, the younger brother got into a fight with thugs at the pub. One of the thugs used a large beer bottle to hit Tani's brother over the head. When Tani arrived, his younger brother's friends all ran away. They left him alone on the ground and lost too much blood. Because of the loss of blood and the delay in emergency care, the younger brother did not survive. Tani couldn't believe this was real. Lying on the hospital bed, the younger brother used the last of his strength, grabbing Tani's shirt. He started crying and weakly said something that Tani couldn't hear. Finally, the younger brother passed away that day. After the funeral, Tani's mother was heartbroken. No matter what the younger brother was like, Tani's mother still loved him. That night, when Tani came home from work and saw his mother sleeping, he did not dare to disturb his mother and went to his room. In the middle of the night, Tani's mother heard the younger brother knocking on the door. His cry was so pitiful and painful, so she went to the door to check it out. As soon as she opened the door, the younger brother was already standing at the door. He looked at his mother with a sad face. She also cried a lot. The younger brother lamented that he wanted to go inside to visit his mother but couldn't get through the door. He could only stand outside the door and call his mother. As soon as he finished his sentence, he turned and walked away. The mother painfully chased after him but couldn't. At that time, she also woke up and shouted loudly for her younger son not to go. Tani heard her mother's voice and rushed to check it out. She sat up and ran quickly to the door, always saying that her son was back. But she ran to the door and saw no one. Tani asked, and she told her dream. Tani comforted her a lot, but to no avail. She still thought that her son told her in a dream, so she refused to sleep, determined to sit in the chair in front of the door to wait for her son. Despite Tani's words, she still wanted to sit and wait. She also refused to close the door, saying that she was afraid that it would be closed and her son couldn't enter the house. And Tani went to Faye to ask for his help. Otherwise, Tani's mother would be sick because of grief. Faye looked at Tani and asked, "Recently have you been looking for someone to change your luck?" That question confused Tani a bit, and he didn't understand why Faye knew. Faye just said that the paper couldn't wrap fire. Faye told Tani to face it. Then Faye stood up and told Tani to take him home to meet Tani's mother. In the car, Faye actively talked about strange things about changing luck and how to prevent someone from entering the house. Tani was just silent at the moment, but his expression revealed a sinister expression. The house where Tani lived was a high-class area. It seemed that Tani's business was very favorable. Arriving at the house, Tani introduced his mother to Faye. It seemed that Tani talked about Faye with his mother before. So when she met Faye, she cried and asked Faye to help her youngest son. Contrary to Tani's expectations, Faye frankly said that the youngest son's soul could not enter the house because there was something stopping him. After saying that, Faye looked around the house to look for this something. Finally, Faye pointed at the table near the door. Then Faye didn't explain quickly but went to the table. He crouched under the table to check. And just as Faye had predicted in his mind, underneath the table was a small knife stuck there. Faye took out the knife and gave it to the mother. She wondered who left the knife there. Faye glanced at Tani to see how he would respond to his mother. Tani admitted that he had put the knife there, but Tani claimed that the shaman said the knife was only used to make business better, not saying it would prevent his brother's spirit from entering the house. Faye took the knife and said that Tani must have been tricked because this short knife could never help others get rich. Faye then told Tani's mother to wrap the knife in red cloth and take it out of the house. The youngest son would be able to enter the house. Hearing this, she was very happy and thanked Faye, but Tani didn't seem to agree. He told his mother to forget about it. That made the mother angry and she howled back at Tani. Seeing that Faye stood up to make peace, Faye said that the youngest son just wanted to see his mother one last time and then left. Even so, Tani was still very upset. He wanted Faye to make sure that the younger brother wouldn't say anything to scare his mother. Faye said that the younger brother passed away recently and was now just a spirit who might not even be able to speak. Tani finally agreed. That night, Faye also helped Tani's mother see her son. Faye smeared the family water on Tani's mother's forehead. This was the kind of water he used to help ordinary people see ghosts. That night the mother slept as usual. At midnight the room door slowly opened. The sound of the door woke her up. She felt someone was entering the room. The cold air began to spread. The youngest son knelt on the ground next to the bed, whispering sorry to his mother. He couldn't seem to say anything other than apologizing to his mother. The mother was afraid that her son's soul could not be able to be liberated safely, so she gritted her teeth and endured, not looking back at her son. Finally, the son stood up and turned away. The mother also choked. As soon as the son left, the mother immediately rushed to the door to see him one last time. Standing at the door, she saw her son's soul slowly disappear without a word, until his shadow disappeared from the corridor. The mother cried out in agony until her throat was hoarse. Then she was exhausted and collapsed. Tani was in time to save his mother from falling. Faye then told Tani to let her rest. His younger brother wouldn't come back. Before leaving, Faye still didn't forget to tell Tani that he should tell his mother the truth. He couldn't just hide it forever. Telling the story to me, Faye told me the truth. Tani used his younger brother to change his luck, helping him to have more success and luck, and his younger brother was getting more and more unlucky. That indirectly damaged his younger brother's life, and he died early. Faye and I had an appointment with a girl early on the weekend. She was having a serious problem. Her face was filled with fear and her eyes were tearing up as if she wanted to cry. Faye quickly comforted and reassured the girl, saying, "Calm down and tell me everything. Trust me." I also consoled her, gave her a glass of water and told her that Faye was very talented and could handle anything. The girl sat for a while, thinking and then trembling, saying she used to have a happy family, but after saying that, she burst into tears and her tears fell on the glass of water on the table. Early in the morning, as usual, her husband was on his way to work, so he would take his son to school. She went out to see them off. She felt very happy because she had a fulfilling family life. She stood motionless and watched the car until the car disappeared. The car raced through each lane of the highway straight to the boy's school. The boy sat quietly in the car playing with his phone while the husband leisurely focused on driving. At the intersection, the signal light turned yellow. Because he didn't pay any attention to the signal, the car went overboard, so the husband let the car pass. However, the big truck from across the street sped by, and everything happened far too quickly. The impact was very severe. Both vehicles were then filled with black smoke, and the husband's car was completely overturned. Fortunately, the husband was not seriously injured, but when he looked at his son, he realized the situation was terrible. It was too late. The boy was gone, and she painfully blamed her husband for why he let the incident happen. After her son died, she suffered as if she were dead, and she had to relocate to another location to avoid her husband for a while in order to gradually regain her spirit. But she appeared to have changed into a different person since then, with very strange actions. She went to the market every day to buy roosters to take home on a regular basis, surprising everyone. People frequently looked at her with strange eyes, as if she was not normal. Her entire skin was white, her eyes were dark, and her figure was taciturn and heavy. She immediately placed a raw chicken on the cutting board and took out a big cleaver after bringing it home. She slammed her hand down, beating the blade straight into the animal's neck. Her eyes sparkled with satisfaction as the blood from the chicken's neck splashed onto her face. The most terrifying part was that after killing the chicken, she took it and went straight out. She stood in front of a glass door, drawing some red blood lines on it with the chicken's neck as a pen. Then she stood in front of the mirror, looked in it, and cried while calling out her son's name. However, after a long time, the mirror began to show a reflection of someone. In front of her appeared a tall black shadow, as black as smoke. She thought it was her son, so she burst into tears. However, after a while, the black shadow transformed into a strange man. She was taken aback and quickly took a step back. But the real horror happened when the man in the mirror began to move and wanted to rush towards her. He put his hands out through the mirror. He was as big as a giant. His body looked like a butcher. He grabbed her neck with his big hand and squeezed it so hard that she couldn't resist. She clenched her teeth, attempting to resist. Then he came out from the mirror, manifested himself to be a demon. She unintentionally fell backwards while fighting him. She snatched the wooden chair next to her and gripped it tightly. Then she smacked him with the chair. The chair also accidentally slammed into the glass so hard that the entire glass broke. Mirror shards were scattered all around her and she collapsed to the floor. She leaned against the bed while seeing human hands appearing in the broken mirror on the floor. She screamed in terror and ran out of the room immediately. She told us everything in tears and terror, pleading with us to help her. I felt a little spine chilling after hearing the story, and Faye's face began to tense. After that, I assisted Faye in transporting the tools to the girl's house. At the time, Faye brought some mirrors and strange talismans. We walked a short distance to the girl's house. Once inside, Faye brought out the talismans he had prepared and instructed me to place the mirror in each of the 4 corners of the room. Then he threw the golden talisman into the house to cast a spell. A cold wind blew in from outside and passed through me, causing the hairs on the back of my neck to shiver. After a while, Faye told me to adjust the mirrors so that they could absorb light and create a human reflection on the wall. Then, following Faye's instructions, I attempted to bring a large mirror to hang in the window. I finally finished after a long struggle and went inside to await the outcome of the matter. I stood outside the room where the incident occurred and looked inside, noting that Faye appeared to have begun casting spells as well. He stood in front of the large broken mirror, raised 2 fingers to the sky and began reciting the mantra. He pointed straight ahead and shouted loudly after reciting the mantra. As soon as the action was over, the mirror made a few earthquake-like shaking sounds and a puff of black smoke appeared. The smoke was so big, it looked both frightening and strange as it flew around the room. The black smoke swirling around the 4 walls was blocked by the mirrors, causing it to collide with objects in the house. The black shadow then flew straight into the wall and appeared on it. I wanted to rush over to see what the hell the black shadow was, but Faye stopped me. As Faye predicted, the black shadow gradually changed and shrunk after a while. Then on the white wall an image of a black person appeared. It got smaller, then bigger, then stopped after a while. Faye just breathed a sigh of relief, now showing a familiar smile every time he completed his mission. After witnessing Faye's magic, the girl became concerned and approached Faye to listen to his instructions. Faye and I left after advising the girl to repaint the wall, but as soon as we turned away, I heard the girl's voice call out again. She burst into tears and walked over to Faye to thank him and asked the 2 of us to assist her in reuniting with her deceased son. I seemed to want to refuse because it was really a difficult and impossible thing to do. The girl who received the rejection said nothing else, but she cried helplessly, putting Faye and myself in an awkward situation. I expected Faye to refuse the girl's request, but he unexpectedly smiled and nodded, agreeing to assist the girl in reuniting with her child. Faye took a basin of water and cast a spell with a golden talisman. The girl was standing behind him, nervously breathing heavily. Then he pointed 2 fingers into the basin of water and turned the talisman in a large circle. After only a few turns, a black shadow appeared beneath the water in the same manner as the girl had done. Then, in the reflection of the basin of water, a boy appeared, and it was her deceased son. The young girl burst into tears of happiness when she saw her son for the last time. After that, Faye and I both quickly left. After we got out, I discovered that the girl used necromancy on a deep web. Actually, the method wasn't entirely wrong, but it ran the risk of summoning the evil spirits. On the way, I asked Faye if the magic floating around the internet worked. Faye laughed and said, there are also things that work, but it's best not to try them if you don't know what they are.